And we are live. Hello, and welcome to Fermenting Opinions. I'm your host, David Popoidin, and this is Fermenting Opinions, the podcast in search of a more palatable political ferment. This is May 4th, 2022. Start off on a high note and say, May the 4th be with you to everyone. That said, and I did not want to start this out given the topic as kind of like a dude fest. And right now it is myself and Haji who's here. Haji, first of all, thank you for joining. I know you've had a rough couple of weeks. We won't get into details about that, but I appreciate you being here. We are going to be talking about the essentially impending overturning of the Roe versus Wade decision, among other things. There should be others joining, particularly people who can get pregnant. Should be joining us soon, hopefully. I don't know exactly what the timeline is on that, but either way, I have my own fermented opinions. I'm drinking a peated scotch, and that always puts me in a funky mood. So we're going to talk about this thing. First of all, Haji, how are you doing tonight?
Other than the personal issues you already know about, I'm doing pretty good.
Good. Yeah. So this thing, what happened literally 2 days ago, there was a leaked, for anyone, and I always hate starting these things, anyone who's been under a rock. So, but seriously, you'd have to be under several rocks to have missed about this news. And I say that with deference to somebody I talked to yesterday who didn't really know what was going on. So there was a Supreme Court brief for a majority decision regarding the Mississippi Department of Health versus Jackson Women's Health organization. This ruling that's supposed to come out, I guess, in a couple of months officially. There was a first draft, or initial draft at least, early draft rather, that written by Justice Samuel Alito. And basically, it is a declaration that that Roe versus Wade, that was the 1973 landmark decision granting the rights of abortion essentially as a constitutional right under the 14th Amendment, and the 1992 case of Planned Parenthood versus Casey, that they are basically going to be null and void. And it is the intention of this court to revert the decision of whether or not abortion is legal and at what stage of pregnancy, revert that back to, state's choice. I don't know why I'm doing the scare quotes. I think there's a rather cynical thing going on here with regards to reverting it back to the states. I was of the opinion in was that 2015, the Obergefell decision? Do you recall what year that was?
Yeah, it was it 2015? I thought, or was it 2014?
It might have been 14 or 15, whatever it was. They're talking about, here comes Daniel. Add Daniel in there. Daniel, I think, may also be traveling. Oh no, he's home. Look at that. Hey Daniel, how's it going?
Hey y'all. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you. I'm gonna get back to what I was saying, and then we can kind of turn it over to. Okay, he changed his mind. He I don't know what happened.
We can hear him.
Can you hear me? He's like, great, I'm gone. See ya. But anyway, so with regards to this decision, he's back. So with regards to this decision, a lot of people bemoan the fact that, the gay marriage or marriage equality, it didn't have popular support, yada yada. I am not of the opinion that we should be doing a head count before enforcing the Constitution. And so I think the popularity or lack thereof isn't really relevant to this. I think the Constitution either explicitly states or implies what it implies. And I think that would hold true for both Roe versus Wade as well as the Obergefell decisions. But Alito believes differently, that he thinks that it's a reach. And this has been a popular argument against, or from the anti-abortion crowd, or that faction, if I'm trying to be a little bit more polite, that essentially that they believe, because it's not explicitly stated in the Constitution, that therefore that it's being read in, and this is some progressive living document style of jurisprudence that they don't really believe in. And that's their opinion. I don't think it's well borne out. So what we're coming to is this is probably going to be, almost certainly going to be a thing. This was a leaked document. We don't know who did it or why. It could be someone from either end of this fight, but somebody did, and now kind of everybody already knows this is how it's going to go. But most of us, I think, suspected already that this is how it was going to go. Daniel, do you got thoughts on this?
I mean, I mostly have question. I don't understand the legal basis for this, because a lot of things are not strictly defined in the constitutions. I was having an online conversation when I with one of my favorite interlocutor, and we were talking about women, and I asked him what's the legal definition of women and where can I find it in the constitutions, and I stump him, with this whole all these conversations, the debates we're having on these modern topics when are not in the constitutions. And lot of legal reasoning we use is the 14th Amendment to kind of justify a lot of these ad- additional rights that we've given people. But I don't understand their legal document. I mean, their legal reasoning that abortion is not in the constitutions, because a lot of things are not in the Constitution.
Yeah, no, there's. So I mean,
So
go ahead, Najee.
let me go ahead. All right. So first of all, that idea is really just the basis of being able to control people, and that's all they really want to do. On top of that, when you had the argument about where the women are in the Constitution, it goes even bigger than that. All right, so tell me where drugs are illegal on federal highways. Show me where it says federal highways in the Constitution.
Right.
Show me where it says Border Patrol. Show me where it shows that the White House is a White House.
Right.
The amount of governmental things that are not in there is ridiculously high. Not to mention and we've had this debate and argument many, many times with the whole originalists versus anything else. Okay, so if you're an originalist, that means there should never have been amendments, which is ridiculous since the creators created amendments. So if they, in creating the original document, said, this document shall change, here's the way to change it, how can you then say that it's never supposed to change?
Right.
Well, so if you've known me in the last probably 15 years, I have a very dim view of originalism as a judicial philosophy. But yeah, it's this back and forth with this facetious kinds of semantics that we're playing, and pedantry involved in what is in the actual text of the Constitution. Like, I think the Constitution absolutely lays out church-state separation. Well, where does it say church and state separation, those words in the Constitution? Because if they're not there, then it doesn't exist or something. It's like your other examples about, like, federal highways and all this other stuff, right? That it's not in there explicitly. That doesn't mean that we don't have other laws or other avenues by which these things come in. Oh, Sarah's joined us in the chat. Oh, hey, Sarah, how you doing? Finally, a woman showed up.
Yeah.
I was supposed to have a bunch of women on the show.
This affects us too. Like I said,
I think, and if I can speak maybe in their defense a little bit, and what I've seen from the right, not everybody. So if you're on the right and you're trying to be, more reasonable in your approach, I'm not talking about you, but by and large, what I've seen is the same thing for the past several weeks, whether it's, like Elon's takeover of Twitter, or, the news of this impending ruling coming out, is basically just Schadenfreude and conservative dude bros laughing at women's unhappiness and general misery. And so if that has caused the women that I know that may otherwise would have wanted to participate on this, cause them to change their minds, because people who are, and I'm not going to name names, but people who I know who are on the right that sometimes take a look at this show, and not everybody, but certain people are looking to see the misery on women's face because they enjoy it. I know this to be the case for more than one person. And if you think I'm talking about you, I'm not. I'm talking about somebody else. I'm just going to say that because I'm going to get a phone call tomorrow. But anyway, it's the Schadenfreude, the delight in the misery of other people. That's why social media is in an uproar and has been in an uproar. Over like the more free speech thing with Twitter and Elon and all that stuff. Like it's the same thing. It's like, oh, we have an audience we can antagonize again now because we've scored some kind of victory. And yeah, I can understand why women or in this case anyone who can get pregnant may not want to be around for that. Completely understand that and sympathize. So I do hope some of my friends show up who are women, but if they don't, I think I understand that as well. That said, sort of back to the meat and potatoes of this. So understanding of the 14th Amendment, that this has to do with due process and equal protection of the laws, that the right, and somebody check me on this, and I'm sure somebody will, that having the right to make personal medical decisions and the right to bodily autonomy, that these are things that we don't get to withhold on the basis of sex, I think is what this really comes down to. And it's Alito basically just saying that no, because these words are not literally in there, that you can't do that, and that's a terrible reading in, and there's no prior precedent, which is hilarious. And I'll get to this point too, and then I'll turn it back over to you guys. And it wasn't in Alito's, but we saw this thing with Susan Collins having the temerity to be surprised that
Oh yeah, she's shocked.
that it was
They lied to
Kavanaugh,
her.
exactly, Kavanaugh, and I think it was Amy Coney Barrett were like, oh no, it's settled law. And when those confirmation hearings, which the confirmation hearings are a farce, first of all, but second of all, the fact that she should be surprised that they said, oh, it's settled law, it's precedent. I'm like, they're originalists. They can say it's settled law and precedent. They also don't care that it's settled law or that there's
Correct.
precedent. In the case of Roe versus Wade, like 50 years, somewhere around there. It doesn't matter. Being an originalist means I'm going to go back and I'm going to seance the founders or whoever crafted this original piece of legislation or whatever it is, and reinterpret basically to fit with what I think their understanding was, which always comes down on the side of whatever the conservative opinion is, which is an amazing coincidence. But that's all they're doing there. But anyway, Daniel, did you have something else?
Because, well,
Oh, we lost Haji. Hopefully he'll come back. He was driving. Hopefully he'll come back.
I mean, my next question is more toward like what to me it. I'm scared of their justification because if it's not in the constitutions, they are, they're going after it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so many things, like Haji was saying, is not in the constitution. So many things that we take for granted. One of the reasons this really bothers me because I saw the stat on the people who has abortions. It is not underage girls or women under 24. 3% of that stat of abortion is women under 24, right? More than 60% is women, married women who has more than one child, right? They just don't have, they don't want to have bigger family, right? And then another 30% of that were women of certain income, right? Because they just could not afford having another child. So as a married man, with a wife that may have difficulty with pregnancy, right?
Mhm.
I don't want Tex to come after me and charge me $100,000 and accuse my wife of a felony because she had a miscarriage and they assume it was an
Exactly.
aborted baby, right?
If that was
So
a comment, I'd be starring it right now. That is 100% the
right,
quagmire that we're looking at
right,
for people who have the
because
best,
this will
according to
because
them, even the best of intentions
right,
to procreate. Like,
this will affect men because again, let's say you hook up on a club with someone and you like, oh my god, I was drunk. I did not mean to get you pregnant. I don't wanna, be the father of your child. Now you're legally bound to the child for the rest of your life. When you do not, when you was no way your intention to have a child because the condom rape, you know what I mean?
right.
So
What? Go ahead. Sorry.
all I'm saying is like why can't they foresee these unintended consequences? Conservatives are supposed to be the masters of unintended consequence, right? We're not
Yeah.
supposed to pass these laws or mess with the laws or mess with this, super balanced system, right? And because unintended consequence. Don't they see the unintended consequence of removing this law that's been around for 50
They,
years?
They do, but they don't care about that. For
yeah.
example,
Go ahead.
there's a reason why many of us have been changing to calling them pro-birthers and not pro-life,
Right,
because of the fact that they really don't care about what happens to the kid afterwards. Because these are the same people that did away with the child credit that eliminated 70% of child poverty. But they're
yeah,
like, nah, we don't need to do that. We don't mind about the kids once they come out. Oh yeah, we'll put them in a system. We'll take the money away from the system, but we still want to put them in a system. That
right,
it really has no care about what happens afterwards. I think the other part of it is everyone keeps using the 14th Amendment. Everybody keeps using the 14th Amendment. That's great and all, but it's also a problem with the 13th Amendment
right,
because they are now a incubator slave to the country. And
Yeah.
the simple argument of when people go, "Oh, it's not that big a deal," I'm like, "All right, the whole purpose is to save a life." Yes, okay. So you tested positive for being a match. We're going to take your kidney, give it to the person over here real quick.
Yeah. I mean, when you create these kinds of analogies, it becomes sort of immediately apparent. And, and this is the fodder for like social media arguments, right? But like it becomes immediately apparent when someone is demanding by law the either the use of your organs or the organs themselves, your physiological resources, and they're saying by law we can punish you for not doing this thing. You
right.
immediately go, no, right? That's the reaction of most of us when I try to frame this and again, this is the male privilege thing or whatever. Like, I can't get pregnant. If I could, and I didn't want to be pregnant anymore, I would not be asking anybody permission. I wouldn't say, "Oh, is it okay?" I am going to be in charge of my own body, and if you're telling me I can't, I'm going to do it anyway. It's not even a question. It's not up for debate. And when I think of it in those kinds of terms, like, no, like, this would never be a debate if males could get pregnant.
Of course not. Of course not. I mean, there are no laws against masturbation, and young men kills a gazillion
Oh yeah,
babies every
this.
week between the age of 14 and whatever, right? The moment we knew how
I
to
mean, it's a bit
shut off
facetious, but I
that
get what
rocket,
you're
right?
saying,
Because
right?
right, because it's insane to me because we are literally telling women you do not own your body. Like this thing that happened to be going in your inside of you by choice or by accident
Yep.
legally own you until it is birth, right? you
Yep.
you you cannot determine anything to that life, and if you do, you're gonna be charged with a felony, and if you're in Texas, a hundred grand, right? It is insane. Like, it's to me, it's like, how can they mentally justify? It's like, can they not see themselves as a woman? Do they not have the imagination to see themselves as the other? Where would I want this law imposed on me?
Yeah, I think in those kinds of moments, what happens is a lot of um, anti-choice activists will default to women who are also anti-choice, and they'll glom onto their arguments, and they're saying, well, I am a woman, I've been through this, or I've, I have that experience, or I do have this vulnerability, and I 100% support pro-life for, X, Y, Z reasons, whatever. And they say, see what she said. It's not really any different than like getting Candace Owens to go up there and, say stuff that sounds like diet racism, and then be like, well, it can't be racist. It was said by a black person. Like it's the same
Right, right.
style
But
of argumentation typically.
but this will force, literally no one is forcing abortion. This is forcing birth, which is a different kind of thing. Like if you don't want to have an abortion, don't have an abortion. But don't force someone to birth a child they are biologically or emotion or whatever reason do not cannot sustain, right? Financially, spiritually, biologically, medically, whatever the reason is, they are justified to not go through that process, right? But this law will force a woman to carry a child to term, right?
Yeah,
Unless her life is in danger,
it sounds hyperbolic, but I mean that this
right?
is
But
sort of
life
what you
in
would call
danger,
reproductive slavery,
right?
right? This
But
is
life and danger can change within a second, right? Because pregnancy are extremely risky. Like I read some stat a while back. Someone might want to check me on that. Like women, one of the big back maybe what was it? There was a time in history where 50% of women die in childbirth. Okay, it was extremely dangerous for a woman
yeah. I mean, I
to
think
carry a child to
risks
full term, right?
are somewhat reduced in
Right,
in the modern era, but like there are still risks. It still
right,
takes an enormous physical
right,
toll on a person just having the pregnancy,
right.
let alone having. And I hate being a damn dude
But
up here
because
saying this shit. I
no,
really
because
do.
we are
Like,
literally, like Haji was saying, we are forcing them into servitude of the state to literally be a concubine for this life the state is claiming to be a person, right?
you know,
So the state is indoctrinating them into service, right? They are literally soldiers, right?
yeah. Well, I
Soldiers.
think about the economic impact of this. The number of stories that I've already
But I,
heard in just the last couple of days of women who had an abortion at one point in their life, and later on were able to change, say, their life circumstances. Say maybe they got pregnant while they were still a teenager or something like
right,
that. They got an abortion. They went on to college. I know people who have very very professional careers. I'll just say it that way, and were able to start families later in life because that was their choice to do that. Their circumstances, their lives, their economic futures, and that of their now children are much improved because they had the ability to make that choice at a critical time in their life. And the thing that has to be understood, because there's not going to be any representation from the anti-choice arguments on this show, at least tonight, is that it's operating off of a presupposition that a fetus is essentially a person or a life, and that's good enough to equate it to a person, to a human being, and all the moral weight that carries with that. And so I do believe that this isn't, at least for most of them, some cynical thing, that they really do believe they're protecting people, like
I mean,
like
that
like
is fine.
babies, the way we think of babies that have been born. I think I believe that is what they really believe. I think that it's fundamentally flawed and that we're never going to
No,
agree
no, no.
about.
I mean, it's a fair argument if you take the John Raw perspective, where like if you attempt to to see yourself as that fetus, would you want to be live, right? Would you want the law to protect you? That is a very fair argument. But in that sense, at the same time, you know, someone who's trying to rob you cannot force you to then save their life, right? Literally, imagine someone broke into your house, right? And they're literally holding you hostage, and they literally say, you cannot do anything until I'm ready to live, right? That is what's going on. This
Yeah,
child is a robber, right? If the woman does not want this child, right? This child is taking possession of this woman's body, right? Not of her free will, pretty much, right? And she cannot do anything, and she's a hostage of the child, right? So rightly, yeah, that child may be a person, but at that moment, that child is a criminal, right? He's a kidnapper now, right?
right. I mean,
What do we
that's
do to kidnappers, right?
Well, it's more of a parasite, but yeah. So
Right, right. So the
the
legal argument as this person has a, has right as a person. Yeah, let's take that argument. Yes, let's take that argument seriously, right? So, okay, from the perspective of a child, right? I am a fetus. I'm in this woman, right? But the moment I am claiming ownership of this body as my own to survive, then I'm not simply a fetus. I am a kidnapper, right?
Right.
Right?
Now,
I hear
now
what
when
you're
you
saying.
talk about
Go ahead,
suing
Ozzy.
for, remember, we are in the country where an old lady got sued and paid $400,000 to the robber that fell through her skylight. So we are in a
I
country
forget
where,
that.
yes, that it really can happen. Well, the insurance agency did, but still, they ended
Right.
up paying because of the person who was going to rob our house that fell through her skylight, who was injured. So yes, that's going to happen. Yes, that could happen. And more importantly, when you look at it as a perspective, whether it is pro birther or pro choice, and yes, Dave, it is ridiculous that we are having this discussion.
Yeah. There's a
In
bunch
many
of.
ways, a lot of times when people ask me, I'm like, so are you pro life or you pro choice? And I'm like, well, I'm pro choice because I will never have to choose it.
Yeah.
So and with me, that's the same perspective as we've gone through on many of the other legal things. Like, yeah, should drugs be illegal? Selling to kids, maybe, but other than that, it's your damn choice.
Right.
The so the idea of which I've actually had a fake libertarian friend who
Yeah.
was, this is a great decision. I'm like, you want
Wait, is
to
he a
not
fake
make
libertarian or a fake friend? I had to get a joke in there somewhere. Sorry.
so the so he was like, this is a good decision. It goes back to, and I'm like, goes back to, how are you anti-choice when you don't want to pay taxes because that's a choice? Like the amount of fake morality that has gone into this process of deciding whether you are pro-life or pro-choice, the idea that they support a rapist wanting, parental rights over the kid that he caused when he raped somebody, and they think that is morally okay,
Now,
pretty much lets you know where that argument
Yeah.
goes. The fact that
well,
that if a 12-year-old is raped by her grandparent and she just happens to be past puberty, so therefore she gets pregnant,
Mhm.
they will force her to have it because they still go, it has nothing to do with it. It has to do with, and the Mississippi law specifically says this, it has to do with the heartbeat. Once there's a heartbeat, there is a life. And
Yeah.
the biggest problem with that statement is they're talking about a heartbeat when there is no heart.
Yeah.
The heart is
Yeah.
not
It's
formed.
yeah. What it was
There
like
cannot be.
6 or 7 weeks or something
I
like that.
mean,
There's a heartbeat, but not really a formed heart.
Yeah, I was
It's
like, you can't.
basically a pulse.
Yeah,
I,
it's just an electronic signal. It's an
right.
electronic signal.
It's just a vein, moving. It's just a
But
vein. It's
the
just a
whole point of this is the emotionality behind it.
right,
Oh,
right,
it's got a
right.
heart. It's a, it's all this stuff. And when people like us kind of like, break that apart scientifically and talking about, what are we really talking about when you're saying that? Oh, it's emotional language. Then, oh, we're monsters, we're murderers, baby killers, all this
I
stuff.
mean, we're not monsters.
Even though I've never, which it doesn't matter if I did or not, but like if ever, been party to or participated or encouraged an abortion, like that doesn't matter. We're all just baby killers.
I mean, to me, here's the argument, right? So you telling me if a man was to rape my wife, and my wife got pregnant in the process, I have to raise this man child now, and this man now have visitation right to his child. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
they're willing to impose that on me and my wife, right? And they don't think they're moral monsters for doing that.
there's
In what world?
so there's I guess a couple of points I want to make. Well, first of all, Dennis, he did bring up a point. Another argument I hear is rape pregnancies are statistically good. Oh, I can actually check this out. Boop. Dennis is a friend of mine. He's uh he is the Filipino, and one of the things he was talking about, I talked to him before the show. He said that in the Philippines, like abortion is illegal, so it's like it's weird to kind of have this debate about losing the right to abortion when his from his culture, that like it's already not a thing over there. And I was going to say something honestly to that. I mean, so first of all, there are yes, rape pregnancies are statistically low. It is a minority of the number of unwanted pregnancies. It does still happen, and I think it can't just be brushed
I mean,
aside.
there are plenty of incest babies out there. So, You
Well,
cannot tell me
there are, but
incest is not rape.
I think this goes down the wrong track in terms of an argument. I mean, these are things worth considering, but like what it really comes down to, I think, will always be bodily autonomy. If something is going to grow inside my body, whether or not it's a person, whether or not it's a baby, I should decide whether or not that gets to happen. If I'm using my physiological resources, if I'm literally damaging my body to
Right.
keep another thing alive
Risking
and
your
let it
life. Yes.
thrive and grow, that requires my ongoing consent up to the time of birth. That is my absolute stance on it. And I don't care if anyone thinks it's morally wrong or anything else. I don't think anybody else should get a say.
See, and along the bodily autonomy argument, which is where most of my personal opinion, I'm right with you on that.
Mm-hmm.
So when people say, it's not that, it's about saving the life. It's making sure that there's, making sure that we don't do anything along those lines. To which I go, vasectomies are reversible.
Yeah.
So at the age of 12, we give every boy a vasectomy until he is married and or decides to have kids.
Yeah,
that's the guaranteed way. That's the guaranteed way to stop any pregnancy.
Problem solved right there. Boom.
Yeah, I mean, so, and you're not wrong. Whether or not that is actually enforceable as a piece of legislation or anything else, that would be a solution if males just did that. I do also personally support that choice for anyone, and especially the way the laws are changing. A lot of people are looking at getting their tubes tied, getting vasectomies, of basically shutting things down, of closing up shop in terms of sexual activity, with partners. I think those may all become necessary, necessary recourse, in the face of this, because if you become pregnant, and even if you are trying to keep, like I say, if you have a miscarriage, if you have, ectopic pregnancy, something like that, you can be regarded with suspicion. You could be prosecuted. And who's going to enforce all? I mean, there's just a number of issues that it's going to create a legal quagmire. But really, kind of the number one thing, and this is again to go back to the Philippines with Dennis's comment. Look at countries where abortion is illegal. Look at the way those societies are, and the general treatment of women in those societies. I don't think that is something the United States really wants to emulate. And I don't see necessarily why it would be different in this case than in those other cases. I am open to an argument as to why those would be significantly different, but I don't see it as likely.
And you also have to take into account that nearly all of those countries have a national declared religion.
It's funny how those go hand in hand. I saw, I think, a joke. It was Trevor Noah talking about the right, very much just hitting on the Taliban, and I'm no fan, of course, but saying really this whole time it was jealousy, like that they get, or it was Sharia law. Did I say it right? Yeah. Sharia law. It's been so long since Islamophobia has been du jour. I've almost forgotten the lingo. Give it another election cycle, maybe. But that's actually not a bad transition point. Now that I say it, do you guys think this will have much of an impact, or enough of an impact, maybe I should say, on the midterm elections and 2024? If this thing, which is almost certainly, this is not quite, but almost signed, sealed, delivered, and you have 13 states that have laws on the books already designed to go in effect the moment that Roe and Casey are overturned, of essentially super draconian abortion bans that are either at 15 weeks or I think 6 or 7 weeks or whenever there's a heartbeat and what have you. Dennis has joined the call. Dennis, welcome, sir. He's muted.
Hello.
How you doing, sir? It's been a while since we've spoken.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
It's been probably years, actually. I think it was a group of us vetching about some apologetics ministry.
Apologetic stuff.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, do you have thoughts you wanted to weigh in about, or are you just here to listen?
Yeah, like earlier you guys are talking about bodily autonomy. One of the arguments that I hear very common against pro-choice is that we're not considering the autonomy and the choice of the fetus. So how do
Right.
you guys respond to that?
Oh, I just made that argument. I just made an argument
Mm,
because that is the John Wall perspective, right? Where
mhm,
everybody in a situation should have a say, right? From the fetus to the mother to the father, right? But
Mm.
the fetus being inside the woman, the moment the woman pretty much claims she does not want this pregnancy, right? This fetus is illegitimate, right? It's like someone breaking into your house and holding you,
mhm,
hostage, right? Because now this fetus is in a place where it doesn't is not wanted, right? So this fetus
mhm,
is holding the woman as a hostage, right? So in the eye of the law, this fetus is a criminal, right? It is a kidnapper, right? So from that
mhm,
perspective, you know, why should we have, why should we allow, people to kidnap people's body for, for
Yeah.
whatever usage?
I'd like to
right.
follow up with that actually, and Dennis, if this will help. I think
Right, that's
it'll
the
it'll it'll
perspective.
it'll kind of buttress what you're saying a little bit, Daniel.
Right.
Mhm,
I
As
think
far as the
so.
woman perspective in this, right? She has, again, if you believe you have autonomy, right, where a cop cannot just go stick something in your body, right? Because that will be considered assault, right? The woman has also that right from her perspective. Like this thing she didn't just magically made this baby, right? A man put his semen inside of her, right? The fact she's claiming she does not want this baby clearly say, okay, I regret this decision. I don't want this,
Mm,
right? So she is in effect rejecting this implantation of this foreign matter in her body, right? So she's being doubly violated, right?
mhm.
That's the woman perspective. The man also, if he does not want this baby, so in a way, he's reclaiming his semen. I do not want the semen to be a baby, right? This is not my choice, right? So
yeah.
from all perspective, this child or whatever people call it does not have a claim to the woman.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna cut you right for one point because of the fact that while we are four guys talking about it, the idea that
Damn
the
it.
idea
I am a husband. I am scared about this
hold on.
law.
The idea that the one who gave the semen gets the choice in that thing, still not necessarily the right direction I want to
I
go.
mean, he
Yeah.
has a choice
Now,
as not to
here's
provide
here's
financial support, right?
here's the other part that drives me nuts when people say the fetus doesn't have a choice.
I'm
Please tell me what legal area does a kid under 13 have the choice in anything?
Yeah.
Right?
Tell
What
me,
is the
tell me, tell me one legal thing, because 13 is when they start asking the kid whether or not they want to go with mom and dad for
That's true.
divorce stuff. So even before then, they can't even pick which parent they want. So all the decisions up to that point are by the parent, all of them, which would mean in this case, it would still be up to the parent
Mhm.
because the fetus, just like a 3-year-old, would not get a choice. The 3-year
But
old, 4-year old, the 7-year old, the 12-year old, none of those guys get a choice. So even if we are talking about what about the fetus's choice? Well, legally, it's under 13, doesn't get a choice.
but at the very least, the parents don't make a choice to kill the 3-year-old or 13-year-old, right?
That is very true. That is
I
very
do,
true.
I do see that point. So
Hold on.
Haji, I'll do you
If
one
they
better.
if they kicked them out the house, which they can legally do,
But yeah,
Well, you can
but
surrender
but
the
but
parental
like
rights.
let me first be perfectly clear here. I'm pro-choice.
No, 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 you're fine.
no, we
Just
know
that
that.
He's doing the devil's advocate
I
thing.
feel like because
We need you to be the devil advocate,
I
Dennis. Go
grew
ahead.
up, yeah, because I grew up in a country where abortion is strictly illegal. Like divorce is not even legal in the Philippines,
Right,
let alone
right,
let
You
alone
already
abortion.
said divorce is not legal either.
right.
Divorce is not
Just
legal. Yeah.
embrace that for a second.
Yeah,
I
so
would still
like
be
I
married if
feel
I was
like
in the Philippines,
I'm
legally
sort of
speaking.
the guy
I'd be
who
living
would
on
be
the other
asking
side of the
questions.
Philippines, but
I wonder
and so would she, to be fair.
I
Like
wonder
it's
what's the marriage rate because of that in the Philippines. Is the marriage rate as high as it is over here?
Well, it's a
well, then you're not
really
allowed to get divorced. Then
it's a really Catholic conservative country, and I think because people there think marriage is sacred. Like I know, like most people there get married like right after college, like when they turn 20 or 21.
Oh wow.
and
That's
and by then they'd be popping
crazy.
babies. Like I know somebody who just graduated college recently, and I guess she's 24 years old now, and she already had 3 kids.
Oh wow.
So
Well,
it's
I mean,
Now,
it's a really different culture.
Yes. God
now,
bless.
imagine
now I
having
gotta
three
say though,
children when you're 24. Imagine
you
being
know, no,
a man in the relationship, or the husband, or whatever the case may be, and already have 3 kids at that age. Like,
When you
think of
do
the
that,
life
when you
choices that
did
get
that in the
limited
black
from you.
community, they call you a welfare queen, and
Yeah. Oh,
and the
yeah, I'm sure all
daddy,
the
the
cynical twins.
daddy's in jail.
Well,
Yes.
let me get back to, I guess, the point I was trying to make about that, and this may be regarded as a little bit facetious, but like, if we're just trying to break down in the pure logical philosophical sense about what about the, if we want to steel man the pro-life position and say that it is a human baby and a person and has a
Has
soul and
rights.
all the other stuff, and has all the rights of a full citizen. Well, guess what? And you're saying, well, what about the baby's choice? The baby does get to choose what happens with its own internal organs, right? It does have providence over that. What it doesn't have is providence over the host, in this case,
Right. The
the
ownership
pregnant
of
person.
yeah.
Like, they get the same choice that the pregnant person has. Like, they have the same freedom and control. So there's no inconsistency with that. It does come across a bit facetious. I'm aware of that. But like, it's not a good argument to say, oh, that's not your body, so it's not your choice. Yeah, but that body is inside my body, so I get to choose whether or not that continues to happen. Like, that's really what it comes down to. And everything else is really wordplay. But even to try and steelman that position, I don't think it stands up at all.
I mean, it's legitimate. Again, if it was in a world where the woman was not claiming that this child, you know, like she didn't want this child, right? Because the moment she's claiming she does not want this child, right?
Right. It has to
She
be
she
ongoing.
right. She's pretty much claiming I'm being invaded, right? I do not support this thing going inside of me, right? So she's being hijacked, right? She's a kidnap victim, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we typically side with the victims in this kind of situation, right? We don't side with the the perpetrator of the kidnapping, right?
Right.
Yeah, can I add something here?
Sure.
Go ahead, yeah, yeah.
And like I agree with David that a lot of this is wordplay, and I find that a lot of arguments from the pro life side is using emotionally charged language,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think they're gonna like how Mr. Daniel here is calling a fetus a criminal or a
Yeah.
burglar,
Right. I mean,
Oh, they will react very poorly to that.
or
That's
oh,
the way
trust me,
The way Haji said
I've
that
been
it's a
called so
parasite.
many things. Like, trust me, my faith has been questioned so many times. This kind of argument. So trust me,
yeah.
I've had my life threatened
Yeah.
when I told these arguments at them.
Let me get to bring it back around, because I was looking through the this brief for a little bit before we got started, and there's Politico has politely highlighted some sections, and I just want to bring this up just to highlight how fucking cynical this brief is, and how just deeply disingenuous it is. It says in this one section, it's fairly early on, only page 24. Not that I've read it word for word. The inescapable conclusion is that the right to abortion is not deeply rooted in the nation's history and traditions. On the contrary, an unbroken tradition of prohibiting abortion on pain of criminal punishment persisted from the earliest, I guess, days of the colonies, and in common law up until 1973, basically. And I mean, he cites like English common law and stuff like that in this as like precedent for causing abortions to be banned. And it's like, why are you citing precedent at all if you were here for the express purpose of saying screw precedent, screw the fact that it's settled law? We think it's wrong because reasons, and we're gonna overturn it. um don't don't cite tradition if you don't care about tradition. Don't cite previous laws if you don't care about stare decisis, like you're in decisions and things of that nature. Like, don't do that. because it is overtly cynical to do so. But again, these are people, they have the majority, they really have the super majority, and it really just comes down to whether or not Roberts is too embarrassed to enjoin this himself, or if he has kind of his own decision that might still affirm it, or some other, third way type version that won't count for much of anything. And you'll get, the 3 dissenters. And then you have this majority of 5. They're going to do what they want because they are hyper partisans. They have adopted a radical judicial philosophy that flies in the face of jurisprudence. And basically ignores it whenever it's convenient to do so. And this is kind of proof of the cynicism of that they're pretending to care about what's happened before, while at the same time deciding that they're picking and choosing what to care about, things that have come before. So I thought it was important to explain that.
I mean, he's still a lawyer. He's still gonna try to use precedent to make his.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's intelligent, man. Like, there's, I think.
At the same time, he's trying to.
Kavanaugh's probably the dumbest one on the court. I
don't think they're dumb.
From my read of him. But like, none of these people are stupid.
Yeah, you don't get that high by being dumb. I don't think they're dumb. I think they know exactly what they're doing. Like you said, they don't care. Yeah. They don't care that the fact, like the majority of people that have abortion, or people that already have family.
Scalia too, when he was alive. I mean, he's he had a very clever, kind of witty kind of style of writing and argumentation. It's like, well, I can argue this way because I can. It's like when Dennis was playing devil's advocate, but like, just imagine just doubling down on that to the extreme to get what you want politically. That's essentially how I view originalism.
Yeah, they don't care. They really thought the founding fathers are like gods. They prophet, like these perfect men who knew how to create a country for 1,000 years plus. When these same men were excuse my language, whipping their slaves, these high moral people who are rapists and separating children from their mothers for financial gain. So I don't see these men as anything but very flawed human beings who had a mindset of a certain time. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I mean it's absolutely, like, it's one of the things that I've come to in the last probably few years at least is sort of abandoning the ideas that the founders are, that their words or the original intent of the Constitution and things like that should be held as sacrosanct. These were flawed men who had limited experience. I'm not saying that they were dumb or deeply unwise or anything like that, but they're not perfect. Obviously, their own, not to add hominem or any of them, but like, at the time, a lot of them lived much less than perfect lives from what we would regard from a moral standpoint currently. And, their thinking and, legislative practice is born of, the time and culture that they lived in. We know better now on a lot of fronts than what they did. We've seen that moral progress. It's not necessarily, to be held as sacrosanct, yet we do, on pain of being called like un-American or unpatriotic or something like that. Yeah. And I think that's nonsense. I could say, here's the outcome I want for a better society, and I should be able to argue for it. But neither here to go further in. I'm going to read another excerpt from this. And this is Alito. Roe's abuse of judicial authority, the Roe versus Wade decision. Roe was egregiously wrong from the start. Its reasoning was exceptionally weak, and the decision has had damaging consequences, And far from bringing out a national settlement of the abortion issue, Roe and Casey have inflamed debate and deepened division. It is time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives. Throw it back to the states, basically, is what they're saying. Mm-hmm. The permissibility of abortion and the limitations upon it are to be resolved, like most important questions of our democracy, by its citizen trying to persuade one another and then voting. This regarding Casey and this and that, concurring in I won't read all this. This is what the Constitution and the rule of law demand. This is the height of cynicism, because we know our legislature, both nationally and at most state levels, are broken, right? You'll either have a super majority in one direction or the other, or you have complete gridlock, and really nothing gets done. And everybody knows this, which is why all of this kind of legislating from the bench has been the new way of creating and changing what stands as the rule of law in this country, either on the state level or on the national level, because we know it doesn't work. We know the system doesn't work anymore. So we kick it to them and they pretend like, oh no, the founders didn't intend for us to do it this way. So we'll kick it back to the states, which we know are broken.
Oh yeah,
I'm in Tennessee. There's a super majority of Republicans. You're in Texas. The legislature is probably still super majority Republican. Is that accurate?
oh yeah, Texas is
So,
still, yeah, oh yeah, it's much. I mean,
and they say all you have to do is vote for different representatives, either on a national level or state level. All you have to do when, these are the same people who are engaging in methods of voter suppression, gerrymandering,
I mean,
what have you. All
yeah.
you have to do is win these elections to get the representatives that you want, and then you can have, then that's how you're really going to go about changing the law. We know it doesn't work. We know that there's a minoritarian rule. To go back to 2016, where what we're looking at today really became cemented in stone, whether or not we realized it, is at the 2016 election, when a person can win the presidential election having lost the popular vote by 3 million votes. When 3 million more people wanted the other person and still didn't get it. And you say, well, all you have to do is win the elections. It's like, well no, there's something broken about this fundamentally. And I understand the arguments about the Electoral College and representative democracy and all that. I've heard all those arguments. But at the end of the day, this just stinks as wrong. And I don't think you can really get around that.
I mean, like, there's no easy way, because these people are, like I said, they're not stupid, they're not dumb, they are students of history. They know how the state tend to abuse minorities, right? They know how the state tend to do really, really terrible things. So we rely on the federal court and Congress, weak or not, to protect the minority, right? Like, yes, maybe a majority of people in a state may be anti-abortion, but this is why we make abortion legal, so that the people who want abortion can have abortion. You know what I mean? So we have a federal system to protect, the minority from the majority, right? Even just keep it as an option for, I don't know, just keep it under law, right? Do not just throw it away and say, let the state decide. Because if we follow that idea before the 13th Amendment, I will not be free. I will be somebody's property. And so they know this. They
You wouldn't
know
have
this
even come to the
history,
country.
Yeah,
right? They know this
well,
history.
yeah. Haji, first of all, I was going to say you got a good-looking twin there.
Right. You're right. They would have to first let me in, right? Because most likely they would not let me in, being a person, right, of color. Because again, another debate. People all want these pronouns, right? Where once upon a time, a black man could not call himself a man. They were not considered men. They were, in most public conversation, they were referred to as boy, right? So as a man back then, if I was to go up to a person and say, please do not call me a boy, call me a man, they would laugh in my face, right? They would say, what kind of pronoun you want me to use now, right? It's the anti-pronoun crowd, right?
That's a really interesting point that I think
right.
It's missed. But we're not doing the pronoun debate today.
I'm sorry.
I went off tangent. No, I feel you, and I want to bring you back for it. But we're not doing it today.
These mindset where these ancient people were wise beyond the years, that is impossible, because they were creatures of their time. You know what I mean? They were the same way we are creatures of our time. Our great grandchildren are gonna look at us and laugh. It's like, oh my God, they have webcam. They did this. They did that. You know what I mean?
I mean, at the same time, these principles, when examined, things like we're talking about what is really granted by the 14th Amendment, or what's granted in the First Amendment, like say, when we're talking about church-state separation, things like that, the endorsement clause and all that. It's not explicitly laid out, but if you're saying these are the rights or protections that you're trying to enshrine, and if you're saying those are actually important to you, this is logically implied by that. just because it doesn't beat you over the head with the verbiage in an extremely overt kind of manner that, you know, that you could read it in crayon and understand it in kindergarten. Like, just because it's not doing that doesn't mean it's not there. That and even if the founders or whoever penned whatever original piece of legislation, say we're talking about something that's not the Constitution, that even within that domain, that there are things and there are situations that they could not have foreseen. But if we're taking this sort of logical precept and applying it to a new situation, there's no reason to say, oh, well, we have to stop and make a whole new thing to say this is okay. If one is implied by the other, you're right there. And this is really just a smokescreen to say, well, we don't like that outcome, so we're going to say you need to go have a legislative fight in order to protect, say, for example, you know, for abortion, because again, this is being the topic of tonight, of saying, oh, well, that's not really in the Constitution. You need to go fight in the legislature and fight the good fight, when we know that process is bullshit, first of all. And second of all, it's unnecessary, because if it's already implied by what is laid out in the 14th Amendment, then you kind of already have to.
I mean, we made it unnecessary.
Unless you're an originalist, right?
Hold on. Well, even if you're an originalist, and you brought up the whole church and state thing, which is why I kind of have to laugh about it, you do realize that when they say the separation of church and state, what they really mean is state can't impose on the church. In many cases, the people who are saying the same thing, not what was originally intended.
It's what they were thinking at the time. Yes,
it's not. Well, no. What I'm saying
but
is,
the logical implication.
They're not
has to cut both ways.
I don't even think that the original people were thinking it. I think the people now who use this think that it's so that the state can't get involved in the church. They believe that the church should be involved in the state. So therefore, that's not, they don't mean separation of state in both directions.
No, I mean, I'm different than who you're talking. The people who are fighting for their religious liberty is, yes, those are the people who are fighting to say government needs to stay out of religion. Religion can get all up in government and turn it into their sock puppet. Like, I understand what you're saying there. But it goes back to the point of the actual logical implications of creating the Establishment Clause in the First Amendment, is that one cannot interfere with the other. If they cross at any point, you're going to lose that freedom of conscience that comes from that. Because when you have the state acting on the church's behalf, guess what? You're not going to get to live free from whatever the precepts of that religion are. Like, and that's just the way it always breaks down.
Yes, and in their mind, that's perfectly fine.
Of course it is.
The other part about the legislative battle, which, you know, since we're on a mostly political talk show, the laughable statements coming from Biden right now, or from any Democrat, about we're going to fight the good fight, and you need to vote more people in, and they'll be able to do it. So what happened with the 2 years of Obama's, super majority, where they literally could have done everything without considering the filibuster? Why they didn't do it? Because
sat on their hands.
They tabled it and said, we don't need to. Roe v. Wade is already established law, and we don't need to worry about it because it's already there. And they
were Charlie Brown with the football, and just like Biden has been. Yeah.
And as everyone keeps talking about whether or not this is going to help for the electoral thing coming up in the midterms, here's the big problem with that. There are already 70 promises that he hasn't done, that he could have done. Like, prime example, there are certain things like he could have made free healthcare for everybody during the pandemic, but he didn't. Yep. So therefore, people
because that would have made him a communist.
Because people are still going in debt because of their COVID stuff. Yeah. He could cancel all of the federal supported student loan today. Yeah. His board, he said, I was going to get a big group together and we'll discuss it, and then we'll do it. Well, his discussion group said, yes, you can cancel as much as you want. But has he done any? No. Nope. So there are so many things that on their profit. Oh, hey, because of what happened, we're going to go ahead and do some police reform, and we're going to do the George Floyd legislation. Did that happen? Nope. Any version of it. Hey, we know that it's very important, and John Lewis was an icon, so we will pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. That happened?
That shit ain't gonna happen
Nope.
either. No.
Did you name your entire campaign on the Build Back Better? You create a Build Back Better plan. You don't even get your own original great campaign thing passed through.
Right.
Didn't happen because he doesn't want to upset people.
So
Here's the thing. Here's the real reason.
Even though they could use this to motivate people, and there are people who may get motivated to do it, but the people who are going to get motivated to do it are in states most likely that it's not going to matter. Because the ones that aren't in those states, probably a quarter of them have already been gerrymandered out anyway, so it's really not going to matter because we're not doing a Voting Rights Act, so that doesn't matter. Yeah. And then on top of the fact that because nothing that was promised when a great amount of people showed up that don't normally vote, none of that came through, those people are not going to be motivated to vote again. But the Republicans who have been running on pro-life, all of those Republican voters are going to show up because of the fact that, look, we actually got that done.
This is this is the part of the show that I hope none of my conservative friends are going to watch, because this is validation for the last, for those who are a little bit more sincere, for the last, at least couple of decades, if not several decades of having to, bite the bullet or hold their nose and pull that lever to vote for whatever odious person who's still going to give them the political outcomes that they are looking for. This would be the big enchilada. This is the ending abortion thing. This is a validation for everyone who, say in this case, really could not stand, the character of Donald Trump, but voted for him anyway because, that he's going to appoint conservative
judges.
They're going to do this, and they've all been validated now. They get, again, I hope all my conservative friends have stopped watching at this point, and we'll get too bored to finish the show because we are at an hour now. That they stop so that they don't hear that and they go, ha, we were right all along. They've probably figured it out anyway. I'm kidding. But yeah, this is it. And now they are, the dog that has caught the car. Question really is what happens next is, what other things can be repealed under the banner of 14th Amendment, don't do shit. If we've done this, we can do a Burgerfell. We can undo that. There's probably a lot of other things that can be undone, at least theoretically. And how much they want to roll back civil rights on other issues, just really comes down to what they feel like, so long as they have their supermajority on the Supreme Court. And Haji, to your point, I do also agree that, as much as there is so much outrage right now, particularly from women and obviously pretty much everybody on the left, will this translate into political victories? When there's been so much lack of enthusiasm up to this point, I honestly don't know. I tend to be very pessimistic about these kinds of things because I don't like being optimistic and then being wrong. But I do tend to be very pessimistic when it comes to these kinds of things. So I don't know if this will transfer to victories in the midterms. But we're a couple of votes away basically in the Senate from losing a lot of shit. It can definitely happen. It gets worse before it gets worse, man. This is we could see a national ban on abortion.
Oh, completely. So the judges that they voted in, as we were talking about the disappointment stuff, right? Mm-hmm. All right. So how did they vote those guys in? The same Republicans who are so opposed, including the conservative Democrats, fake Republicans of Sinema and Manchin. So they're so against the filibuster. How did they get those judges in? Oh, yeah. They put a caveat or carve out for the filibuster so that they could approve judges without needing a filibuster, which was originally part of the filibuster, but they carved that out. So they were able to carve that out to get people in to change your rights, but they couldn't do that carve out to give you rights, and they couldn't do that carve out to give you support, but they can do the carve out, which they also did for military spending. Not that ever comes as an issue. They did that carve out when it comes to foreign aid. So we can give money to other people and we can give money and arms to other countries, but we can't use that caveat to keep our citizens, safe, alive, or, out of poverty.
definitely.
I'm gonna be the one person here who kind of, say vote Democrat, because Democrats are the lesser of two evil. At least they're
Hmm.
not trying to take people's rights. I mean, they're not trying to expand them, but they're not trying to take away people's right. Where Republicans are actively trying to take away voters' right. Trying to take away, you know, body autonomy right, right? Trying to take away
Yeah,
education right, trying to take
that's
away housing right. Trying to take away, you name it, immigrant, immigrant right to, to due process, trying to take away many things we hold dear, as citizen of this country. Where, yeah, yeah, they're two bads, right? But one is worse than the other. So yeah, vote
The only problem
Democrat.
is you're basically deciding whether you want to be punched in the face or punched in the gut.
I
But
would rather
yeah.
be,
either
no,
way,
Well,
no,
here's
either
no,
way, you're still getting
punch in the
punched.
like I say,
face or get put back into chain. I would
yeah.
take the punch, right? I
Yeah,
would take the punch.
here's so okay. So I do want to speak. I do want to say one thing first, and it's basically because I I told someone I would do this. To address one other thing about this leaked document, and I do want to get right back to what you were saying. Um, I do want to address, should it have been leaked? I think ultimately no. This is not a good way. The
Why?
Because
Why?
it's interference with the, first of all, we don't know who did it or why, right?
I
And
think it's John Robert did it. I think John Robert did it.
we can speculate and pontificate about it, but I don't think there are good arguments for why either side would do this. Either it's to try and shame what they are doing and bring a lot of public outcry against the bench for doing this preemptively, or it's to try to lock in the conservative justices in case any of them are starting to get cold feet about doing something so monumental. Because like they could have gone with like, a middle of the road, which is still egregious, middle of the road, like 15-week ban instead of like whole hog, fuck all of this. Like, but they really took the bull by the horns on this one. It's a big thing to do.
Yeah.
50 years of precedent. We're
Oh
just
yeah.
saying, now we don't feel like that anymore. It's a huge thing. So like,
Oh
so
yeah.
there's that, but also like, this internal process, like, and it's not, and I don't want to give too much credit to basically what a lot of conservatives are complaining about in the face of this, is like, but ultimately, no. If we were talking about other decisions and things like that, that like, is this a thing that should really be happening? No, people shouldn't be leaking sort of these internal documents that are
Why?
the
Why?
Supreme Court.
Why?
Well, I because it's an interference of the process.
Because they
And
interfere with the process when they sort of see from Obama.
I
I
mean,
stopped
that's
respecting the
also
Supreme
fair.
Court after they sort of see
The fact that
they're a political body.
the bench itself is less legitimate, as a respectable body and head of branch of government. Yeah, I completely sympathize with that.
Yeah,
But at the same time, this does also kind of make it worse. That this is giving over to more
they give a middle
politicization.
finger to the Supreme Court a long time ago when they stole seats. They literally
I,
stole a seat
I
from
do hear
a
that. I
sitting
do.
president. Why? Because he's black. Because he's not deserving to be, to do the one thing every white guy before him did. I mean, I stopped respecting them a long time ago. They
Yeah, I
know
mean,
it's a
decisions like
political.
this are like, are the proof is in the pudding of the
They don't care about
illegitimacy
the
of
system.
A, that judicial philosophy, and B, the function of the court. Obviously, what they decide is still legally binding. It's still real, in that sense. But like, is this a body that we can
If
continue to have faith in, right?
no, if this president stand, if this
As a
president
populace?
stand,
No, not really.
I think people gonna start believing. I mean, I've
Yeah,
give up on them a long time ago. I
yeah.
think
So
if
you
this
you gave
president,
up during Obama, and you're kind of ignoring the fact that the Supreme Court elected George Bush.
because again, I still had some
Yeah.
faith. I think Obama when they did what they did under Obama, it really killed my faith. You're right. But when they did what they did under with Bush, I was like, okay, there's still hope. Once I saw how the Senate blatantly stole a seat from
At least Gore conceded.
elected, yeah, a elected president, right? That had a majority of the electoral vote in the vote themselves. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, you guys don't care about whatever, right? You don't care about institutions. It's all pretense, right? It's all
Yeah,
pretense.
I think
It's all pretense.
that's the real thing, is that there's no expectation of anything but cynicism.
After that, yes, after
And
they did that, it was just
we
all
keep getting these reinforcements that that is exactly what is at play here, and it's to win. It is, everything is a
right.
political football now, and guess what, guys? They are winning, and there's really
Oh
no
yeah,
silver
I
lining
want
to
them to
that.
win because I want them to win to the
Oh,
point where this system gonna blow up and they're
I'd
fixed.
rather women not suffer, but or
No, it's not
people
about
who
women to
get pregnant
suffer.
not suffer.
When back in the, I forgot what year it was where the women in Liberia literally had a a strike on sex. They would not have sex with their men. I forgot for how long,
They should do that
force the
here.
men to go negotiate a peace deal. Right? Women should do that over here. If it had to get this bad for women to strike sex or for women to not show up at work, to literally bring the system to a halt, to force these men to to change their mind. Hell yeah, keep winning.
Yeah.
Keep winning until you force the people to break the system and start
That
over.
wouldn't have as strong of an effect. All the porn memberships would just go up.
No, I'm talking about if every women,
Well, rape would go up is probably what would happen.
if
That's also true.
60% of women tomorrow didn't show up to work, trust me, it will
Porn is actually a
halt the
remedy
system.
for rape. It's also been somewhat
Yes.
statistically proven.
Yeah.
Men
It
have other
will
ways to
halt.
relieve themselves. They stop attacking women. Like it's, I
Well,
mean,
okay,
it
yeah,
is
yeah,
a
but
thing. Yeah,
if 60% of women were to boycott, work was to literally boycott for just for a week, just teachers, right? Majority of women, right?
yeah.
Nurses, majority of women, right? What are the big
Also,
group
two
of,
professions that are not respected appropriately.
right? But
Yeah.
imagine tomorrow if emergency rooms cannot
What a
open because
coincidence, Haji.
60% of their staff did not show up, right? Imagine if nurses, emergency room could not open up tomorrow because women are boycotting, right?
No.
It will grind the system to a halt,
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
Where plane cannot
I
take
hear
off
you, man.
because
I'm not trying to piss in your Cheerios, with regards to your passion. I just it's going to take a lot of high level organizing to affect those kinds of events. This just happened. It's 2 days ago, so I'm not going to say it's not going to happen. But I would say wait and see what the real mobilization is.
no, I'm saying let them keep winning, because you're gonna wake up the beast. You're
Yeah.
gonna the majority.
And all I can say is I hope so. And I'm going to be there to. Oh yeah, the other thing I wanted to get back to with regards to, are the Democrats so good at failing in moments like this? Of course they are. They're like,
I mean,
I don't know.
it's
They were
not,
like trained from birth to fail in moments of
I don't know
crisis,
about
where they
failing.
really need to get their shit together, and kick, and
We
they're not
we're
going
not
to,
willing
right?
to fight dirty, and I hear people keep saying
Right.
Democrats should
So we
fight
keep
dirty.
playing. They keep.
If
I'm not
Democrats
a
fight
Democrat anymore.
dirty, it's gonna get ugly. It's gonna get tit for tat. Only end up with everybody being
They
blind.
are
Yeah,
good at taking the
but
high
right now,
road,
Okay.
and
all we have is tit and no tat.
yeah,
Again, tit for tat is end up with everybody being blind. I rather the Democrat keep trying to do the rational thing, the sensible thing, because if they stop,
They don't even
we
use the
all
sensible arguments. For example,
we
how
are
many
screwed.
Republicans went back and told their districts that they brought them money for public, highways and stuff, while they voted against the bill that gave
Oh,
it to them?
Democrat did that too. I mean, our
Right.
local
But here's
rep,
the thing: it's not playing dirty to go, "Hey, they didn't vote for it." That's not playing dirty.
no. But again,
But they don't even do that. They
they're
don't even do
saving
the,
that
"Hey,
for the
they didn't vote for it."
campaigns.
They don't even go into West Virginia and say, "Hey, your guy over here says you guys don't want new highways, and you guys also don't want the money going to your kids." Right?
yeah.
They don't even do that. So that's not fighting dirty. That's literally just fighting.
Right. Again,
They go,
a
"I
lot of
said
these
my point. They're fighting. I don't have to say anything else. I guess they win."
political messaging are done at the local level,
Mhm.
where that is not the tactic the people on the ground are choosing to do. But again, we cannot blame this as on the Democratic Party as that they are good at failing. Do not,
They
because a lot of people don't want
I
to be
mean,
associated
yes, they are good at
with
failing, but at the
failing.
same time, it's an act of like victim blaming, of being like, oh, they like the people who did this are still the aggressors, right? Just because I don't want to get into a rape analogy here. I'm not going to do
No,
it,
no, no, no. I
especially
mean,
given the topic. But like, yes, the Democrats are not doing a good job, but at the same time, I've seen too many people turn their focus and animus on them, and it's like, oh, well, they're just doing what they believe. Like, they're still doing a thing that's harming lots and lots of people, and you can't lose sight of that because you're annoyed with the people who are supposed to be your team, right? You can't lose sight of that. And I've killed the conversation.
No, I think calling, constantly saying the Democrat are failing on failing, you are not giving people the attraction to switch parties because they don't want to be associated with a losing party. When Democrats are the rational party, they're not trying to push this country into this fascist, anti world that these conservative are having a boner for. That is not a bad thing to try to be the rational, the sensible, the cooperative, compromising party. That is what democracy is about. If
Sure,
not,
but that always
we're
loses,
gonna end up
right?
in
Or
fisticuff,
most
right?
of the time.
We're gonna end up in fisticuff, and trust me, we don't want to end up in fisticuff. I was just in Poland where the people are receiving these refugees. You do not want to be witness to war, to where countries are tearing itself apart. So I would rather the Democrat be, pushovers, whatever, versus, getting irate where people want to get on the streets, whether, want to get crazy, because then you end up in a really, 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 really highly, highly, highly flammable situation.
And here's the problem, though. You keep saying that they should be the rational ones and they shouldn't fight harder than they're fighting because you don't want to see the fights in the street. But literally, them not doing anything is what's going to eventually result in people fighting in the streets. The idea behind it, you can be as rational as you want to be, but
No,
if
the
you
fighting
don't,
in the
if
street,
you don't take advantage of your power when you have power, then you don't get to say that's not even a matter of being argumentative or rational.
right,
Rationally, if the Democratic policy was to do Build Back Better, we'll use that as a nice universal policy.
Sure.
That was to Build Back Better. They all supported Biden to get elected specifically on his idea of Build Back Better.
right,
And then when he came up with Build Back Better, two of them said, nah, don't want to do it.
right. They didn't have the vote.
So those two that didn't do it and didn't vote with them and didn't stay rational, because that would be the rational thing, the country voted in Biden because of his idea of Build Back Better. They said, no, I don't want to support that. I'd rather be a Republican and vote with the Republicans.
Right.
The problem that you have is you are saying if one, which is the part you're not quite realizing, is that if both parties have things that they want to get done, and the Republican Party does exactly what they want to get done, and everybody gets on board, and the Democratic Party compromises with the Republicans so that the Republicans can do their thing. And then when the Democrats are in power, Republicans never compromise back. The idea of staying rational and still hoping that they're going to do something is not helping the argument. It does not help move the country forward. It does not help the country not get angry. All it does is inflame all of the people who are supposed to be supporting the rational ones and slowly becoming more irrational because they're going, no matter how much we do and no matter how much we say we want something, you have decided that you would rather compromise what we want and allow them to have what they want.
Okay, so let me still amend my own position for a little bit. I'm not saying rational in this sense, like yes, I wish they had better advisors, better campaign slogan, better whatever. But what I'm saying is that they're not resulting to the same tactic as the Republican are willing to resort to. Gerrymandering, right? Where literally they are playing dirty. If Democrat was to play as dirty as them, was to result to as this race baiting, anti-immigration, anti-Semitic, all these Jewish laser whatever crap the Republicans are pulling out of the you know what to win by any means necessary, it will end up very, very, very nasty. That's what I'm talking about.
Here's the
That's what
slight
I mean.
problem.
Here's
Where
the
you
slight
have
problem. Daniel, I hear
Here's
you.
the slight problem with the way you said that, because guess what? How did Biden get elected? Did he get elected off of rational stuff, or did he get elected of don't vote for Trump? It was
he
an
got elected
emotion.
of rational stuff.
No,
Stuff.
he was voted in. He
the
was
student
voted
debt.
in because people didn't want Trump.
I'm a
He
one
was
nation
voted in
voter.
because
I
people
want my
didn't
student
want
debt
Trump. Yeah,
expired.
that's
No.
true. You did want that, but why did he truly get elected? If you are honestly sitting here thinking that the guy who came up with the fact that you can't get
Of
out of your
course, I
debt
didn't
for
want Trump. Yeah,
bankruptcy was actually going to sign off student debt, that was not exactly a full thought. The
That's
simple fact was he ran on, I'm not Trump.
right. Okay. Yes.
That's an
the real thing.
emotional
The
decision.
yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if it's stemming. Blood loss is not necessarily the same thing as paying off your your hospital bill, right? It's kind of how I look at the analogy with Biden versus Trump in 2020 is like, yeah, it's not great, but like we could have elected a ham sandwich, right? And the country could have come together and elected a ham sandwich for not being Trump. That's not an emotional decision. That is a decision to pick something that is not as bad as the thing that currently is. Right?
And you think he's a lot better than the ham sandwich?
Not particularly, no.
With the exception of
That's why
his foreign policy has been great. I'm gonna
yeah,
admit.
no,
Foreign
he's.
policy's
I think
good.
he's done a good job responding both to COVID and getting the vaccine out, and I think he's done a good job regarding Ukraine so far. I think he's done a good job with those things, legitimately. But yeah, other than that, basically a ham sandwich would have done as an alternative to Donald Trump. Like it's true. It's not an emotional thing. It's not hyperbole. I think Donald Trump was that bad of a president in terms of policy and tone and everything else, and just the cronyism and the con jobs and the lying and all this shit. Like having a inanimate object as the president of the United States would have been better than that. We got something that was slightly better than that is the way I look at it. And so when people, oh, you don't even like Biden. No, I really don't. But guess what? It's not for any of the reasons that you don't like him. It's because he didn't do, to your point, Haji, it's because he didn't do any of the things that you were just talking about, Haji. Like, that's why I think he's a meddling president.
I mean, I don't know how. Again, I'm not arguing saying Biden could not do better, but I don't know how much of an active president do we want. There's a lot of these things we have to respect the fact he may not have the vote. He has Democrats who are not really Democrat in there. Where how much of that can we really put at the feet of the presidency? Where
student debt, 100% his position. He can
right
do it completely
these
on his own. That's 100% his fault. Not being
these
able to put people on
Wouldn't it be great if he
free
waited till like
healthcare
a
while
little
it
bit
was
before
during
the
the
midterms
time?
and
100%
be like,
his
boom,
fault.
student debt gone. Like,
now these 2 year cycle that we live in where nothing get done because we in these 2 year political cycles, it does not help the system. It's in a way the system is designed to kind of grind to a halt, right? The more the more we need the government to do something. It seemed to be almost adverse to progress a little bit, right? It's try to slow down progress. Where a lot of this that we want from the Democrat is they just because of the way the system has been jerry-rigged against the rational, sensible, compromising people, where it is not very attractive right now, right?
So I'm gonna use a phrase that I'm really annoyed that no one has ever called this before.
Mhm.
So and I haven't heard it, but it doesn't mean someone else has done it. The reason why everything's messed up is because we have too many dinos.
Too many what?
Democrats
in name only. You've heard of rhinos, right?
And-
So it's the same thing.
Democrat. I mean, yeah, I
And
Democrat.
hold on. And
Unleash.
they all still believe that the old system, as in like what used to exist, which is now extinct, like the dinosaurs, still exists. Biden still thinks he can go walk over to McConnell and go, "Hey, let's hang this out and do his stuff." Yeah, that time period, that's gone. It doesn't exist anymore.
I mean,
It ended in Bush's second term.
pretty
I won't even
much.
go into Obama stuff. And Bush's second term is when it stopped going, when the Tea Party started to come up before it even got to be Obama, and they started all of their crap. The idea of let's meet at a table and we'll talk this out and we'll come up with something that's in between both of our stuff. That ended. What it really is now is Republicans go, this is what I think I can get passed. Let's make the rules and change the rules so I can get it to what I wanted to be passed. And the Democrats, on the other hand, goes, yeah, well, I don't think we should change the rules, so I guess we're not going to pass anything.
I mean, Newt Gingrich Mitch McConnell and Trump kind of kill the House of Representatives, the Senate, and
Mm.
the presidency. Now it's the Supreme Court turn to die, right?
Yeah, and
In
the
the
worst thing
people's
is
mind.
Yeah,
Trump taught us how much of the stuff that the presidents did that was simply out of tradition and not an actual rule.
Right, right. So,
which is a good reason to have further checks on the power of the presidency. I agree with that, kind of to your point, Daniel, and also Haji. That's incredibly accurate. There's things that we just assumed as institutions and norms and things like that. It's like, well, what if somebody gets in there and decides they're going to just do whatever the hell they feel like, and there's not an
right.
actual rule or law or anything that says that they can't, and so they
And
just do, and we're all
because
sitting here with our jaws on the floor
I
about it.
mean, like they prove us to us, right? If it's
Yeah,
not in the Constitution, that means it's legal, right?
right.
So, or
Well, it's
it
just a further unraveling of what we regarded as sort of sacrosanct about our republic, right? That we, that we thought it was a certain thing, and we are being continuously disabused of those notions, like the idea that the real fights about policy are fought in the legislature. Like that's bullshit. Like we know those things aren't really things anymore. Despite when you get sort of speeches or opinions like this from people like Alito, or I think it was like was it Steve Scalise, like a while ago, was saying like this is how it should really, and then proceed to go and immediately do the opposite of the thing that they said. These are the way things should be. Like, because we just know it's just not true. And so we watch this entire unraveling. And this is where I get someone who is, I guess, who you would call like a leftist, or someone who is like on the left end of being a progressive, of saying like all this stuff is actually broken. Like, and we're playing this game, of pretending like it's not on threat of being called unpatriotic, right? Which is, as far as I can tell, is the only real rejoinder to that. But like these things, they just don't work anymore. And it's essentially because we stopped believing in them, because we started, certain more shrewd individuals realize that this entire system can be gamed, and we
oh yeah,
can win. We could say one thing. It's like Mitch McConnell is a perfect example of this,
oh yeah,
of decrying partisanship and all this other stuff, while being just as cynically two-faced about it as possible when it's his turn to act with consistency, to literally like laugh it off. We were, like Casey presented, how he stole Merrick Garland's seat to give to Gorsuch. Would he do the same thing? If it was Trump's last days in office? Well, we've already seen how that ended, right?
oh
Like,
you say
and when he
yes.
was actually asked about it, like I think in like 2018 or 2019, and he laughed.
He said he would do it again. If
Like,
it's, of
we know
course,
it's bullshit. They know it's bullshit.
yeah.
Like, and so when you say, where do we go from here? What does this democracy look like moving forward? Like, this is kind of where we're at. We have like this bitter, pessimistic cynicism about everything. That's what America is now, and that's why everyone's so fucking miserable.
They're all about winning, and that psychology, well, that philosophy never been productive for
Mm,
mankind. A philosophy of winning is very, very, very dangerous.
mm.
So that's all they're about now, and they think
But
that's
winning's
gonna.
all that, but at the same time, I mean, you're right, but winning is all that. When winning has real effects that changes the lives and fortunes of so many people, the incentive structure is to only do that, and that's where we are now.
But the winning,
We've
what
we've
And
gamed our American
what
democracy out to the point where it's irrelevant.
I mean, we didn't
uh,
really win.
we
We kind of.
it was gained out by Citizens United.
Yeah,
So as soon as it's right now, the democracy runs exactly the way it should since Citizens United.
Right.
So
yeah,
as soon as big money was allowed to come in,
Yep.
that's why when people go, hey, they work for you, and I'm like, no, they don't work for us. They get $192,000 from us. But you know what? Joe Manchin makes about $4 million off of stuff from other,
Yep.
hmm
investors. I'm like,
Yep.
so who does he work for? We're like his part-time job. We're like the
Yep.
rich kid. This is like the rich kid that works at Arby's. He just
Um,
wanted some fries.
I'm for a
yeah.
ranked choice system, and the Congress should be like the jury system, where you get called up there, you know,
Mm.
and for 2 years of your life, that's what you do. You work as a congressperson, as a senator, and you pass laws, and then you come back home It
Yeah,
should
and
all
I
be
and
a
I
jury-based system.
and I would even go with the whole weird Starship Troopers version of the fact that not saying you have to join the military, but you have to do something in service. So, hey, you work at the post office for 4 years. Hey, you go to the Peace Corps for 4 years. Hey, you
Hmm.
work at the DMV for 4 years. But you spend
Yeah.
4 years serving the country, no matter
Mm.
what your money is. Like the part that people don't remember from Starship Trooper is his parents were rich.
Hmm.
He wanted to
Yeah,
vote,
I
but his
think. I
parents were
mean,
rich.
that it, that
And I'm not trying to,
that
and
could
that's why I
turn
said like
a
I
little
don't
bit
want them all to go.
nationalistic really fast. But I think
I mean, I don't know about
there's an undercurrent that I do kind of agree with. Participating in something
democracy is a team sport,
that gives
you
you a
know.
sense of national pride and identity, right? That you care about your community and your country and things like that. Because we don't. It's it's a little bit putting you know bailing out the basement while there's holes in the roof at this point, because there's so much disillusionment. Um, but yeah, generally speaking, the idea of creating a sense of we're all in this together for one reason or another, whether, like you said, it doesn't have to be military service, it could be the damn post office or whatever, but you're doing something, as part of that, I think could help. But, but right now it could be too little too late. Again, I'm a consummate pessimist at this point, with regards to this country. And this isn't, and again, for my conservative friends who may watch this isn't me wailing or despairing or moaning or anything that you get to celebrate. This is just a despite the fact that I'm 2 scotches in, it's a relatively sober view of the fact that the American experiment, I think, is failing. And while they may rejoice in short-term victories, I think ultimately it's not going to end well.
Yeah, something like 50 or 60% of Republicans polled said that they would want a king or a dictator.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, we're already at that point.
I mean they
Yeah.
are they
Is that the
with
same
us.
60% that think Trump won?
Probably
What's that Venn diagram? What does that Venn diagram
probably
look
have
like?
a probably is an overlap
Here's
between
my
that and
here's the last hot take of the night. Is that Venn diagram a circle? Is that
it's it's kind of sad to because people are tired, man. I mean, we have
Mhm.
beaten down the citizenship. They have no bandwidth for anything but work, sleep, if they're even lucky to get sleep, and barely enough to survive. So they don't have bandwidth for democracy. Democracy, this version of it that we invented over here, which
Well, it's
the
an
Greek
abstract
kind of
concept,
invented.
right?
No, it require you to be free from labor. This is one of the things I hate about democracy, the fact this the version that the Greek invented, because they had slave working for them. They had the freedom of mind
Man,
and
I
freedom
hear you.
from labor to be
I
free
I want to have
to
this
think about
conversation.
these deep things, you know.
I do want to have
But
this conversation. Really, it's kind of like where we could. I tried to do a show last
yeah, we
week
could go on
about
forever.
Elon Musk
Yeah.
and kind of the future of technology and things like that. Um, that's a worthy topic. That didn't come together last week, unfortunately. I do want to revisit that, maybe especially after the acquisition, if it does go through. But I don't want to get into that tonight. I do kind of want to put a bow on this because it's after 10, and I'm going to turn it into a pumpkin. Um,
Go ahead.
Maybe got a little off topic at the end, but basically this is the prognostication of doom. I feel really bad for people who can get pregnant in this country. I think it is a sad and cynical day in time that we live in, and things are going to get worse. I advise you do what you need to take care of your bodies and protect yourselves, and in whatever means is necessary, because you cannot turn to the basic decency of other people or the law for protection anymore. Once this thing does finally come down, which I think is in a couple of months, that it's coming. I've already heard reports that there's like basically a rush on abortions, because people who
Mm.
and this is I'll make this as a final point. The people who are afraid that their choice, and they're not wrong to be afraid, their choice is about to get taken away, are acting in haste where they may have chosen otherwise if they were given the time and space to
really
think about it and actually have options to weigh. They're saying, no, I've got to do this now because, it'll be too late. This is how all marketing works, by the way. You're afraid of not having the thing or not being able to do the thing.
Yep.
So you go and you buy that good or service out of fear of not having it. That's what's happening right now. There is a rush on it. Also, statistically, when abortion is banned, it doesn't actually reduce abortion. It reduces safe and legal abortion.
Right.
So we're going to go back to, DIY abortion. And there's going to be consequences for that too. There's going to be lives lost. There's going to be people hurt. Again, to some people, that's worth it. I feel real bad for people who can get pregnant right now in this country. And again, it's going to get worse before it gets worse.
Yep.
These are the jokes.
Yep.
This is what I'm the Adams ruined everything of politics. Like I'm gonna, hey guys, everything sucks. Everyone's full of shit. This is all bad. Peace out. Like that's sort of my shtick, I guess, anymore. But I would love to be injected with hope and enthusiasm of something going forward. People are talking about, oh, this is going to cause a blue wave. You've just guaranteed, that this is going to be the single issue vote for the midterms of 2024. I very much hope it is. I hope to see that moving forward. I hope this will take people out of their recovery period from the Trump years, of realizing that, yes, we blew up the Death Star, but guess who's back? The First Order essentially is, to play in the Star Wars metaphor for the fourth. Like this is what we're looking at now, and we have Snoke, which I guess is Alito. We blew up a Death Star, not Star Killer Base. Okay.
Well, no, before Star Killer, you had to make another Death Star.
So it was the Death Star 2. Yeah, it's true. Yep. That's true.
So Trump could come back. And
then,
we
haven't. Vader hasn't.
Star Killer Base comes because
who would that be then?
Carlson. Star Killer Base, Tucker Carlson.
Tucker Carlson. He's that. He's that ginger bastard from the new series. I can't remember his name. The General Hux or something like that. That's Carlson.
He's laughing all the way to the bank. He's laughing all the way to the bank. He's laughing all the way to the bank. So
I got jokes, man.
He doesn't. I'm not
gonna keep drinking. I gotta get up early.
He's already in inheritance anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah. So guys, if you've been rested for a while, if you've been recovering from the Trump years, and you feel belabored, like it's time to get up off your ass. Like it is time to go.
The problem
protest.
The problem
I would say protest peacefully.
The problem is Republicans will single issue vote. Democrats don't single issue vote.
No, we don't.
We don't even vote for people that are like,
I'm trying to be optimistic for once.
Hey, he does 78% of the stuff that I like. Oh, it's only 78%? No.
Right. Yeah.
We are. Yeah.
If you ever want to go back, Daniel, especially if you ever want to go back, I did a podcast episode. It was like, I think early 2020 or it was 2019. I talked to a guy who was like a Bernie bro and was like, oh, I would never, the Bernie is basically not far left enough for me. And, basically, essentially he's embraced the idea that, if it's not perfect, then I don't want it. And he was whole hog on it. And he was a guy lived in a swing state. And he's like, I'm going to go third party. And, who cares if somebody who is much worse for a lot of people gets in there because I didn't get what I wanted. So I'm going to take my ball and go home. Like that attitude still pervades. It's still ridiculous. Yeah. So there's still that hasn't stopped. But yeah, so just to go back to my earlier point, it's time to get moving, people. Please get up off your asses. They're going to take all your rights if you let them.
Pretty much.
In many senses, it's too late. Say for decisions like this, the legislature is bullshit, but not entirely out of the question to get something done with overwhelming force. It's not completely over. I would say get up and fight. I will participate. I hope you do too. I want to say thank you to everybody. I want to say again, I understand why the women who previously agreed to come on didn't, because again, the right wing response to all of these things as political victories is to sneer and laugh and be horrible, generally speaking, to people who are experiencing misery. They embrace it. I don't want to get into an argument about like fruits of the spirit and how the overlap between right wing people in general and right wing Christians as just really enjoying the misery of other people and kind of what the Bible says about all that stuff. Like I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say that for another night. Let me see. There's a guy, I don't even know this guy. Trey Houston says, it's been great listening to y'all. I followed this page for a while. This is the first time I've watched listen. Really good discussion tonight. Why, thank you, Trey. I certainly appreciate that. So Trey and others who have been watching and or participating, thank you for that. Please tell your friends to like and follow the YouTube channel, my page, our page, I should say, Fermenting Opinions podcast. We also have a discussion group. Please check us out there. Also the website and the RSS feed on iTunes, Beyond Pod, or wherever else you get your podcasting on. I release episodes on there as well in MP3 format to enjoy on your way to or from work. Again, thank you, Haji, Dennis, and Daniel for being on. I really appreciate it. That said, I'm David Poseidon. This is Fermenting Opinions, and we'll see you next time.